Hello and welcome to Loneliness and You, a podcast on the research and experience of loneliness. I'm your host, Axel Seaman. My guest today is Rene Ohms. Rene Ohms is a cave explorer who lives in the Black Hills of South Dakota. She travels to some of the most remote underground places on the planet to discover and map cave passages no human has ever seen. These expeditions often require camping deep underground for several days, and Rene has been on more than 50 such cave camps. Rene was the 2020 recipient of the National Speleological Society NSS Liu Bicking Award, the Lifetime Achievement Award for Cave Exploration. Rene, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, I'm very excited to have you. Can't wait to hear all about what it's like to hang out in a cave. And we always start our conversation by inviting our guests to bring something to their interviews that represents their experience to them. So what have you brought us today?
I brought my caving helmet with my lights attached to the front of it.
Right. So describe that to us a little bit. It looks quite heavy.
It's actually fairly lightweight. We try to minimize weight as much as possible. And, when you're caving and you're going through a crawlway and your head is kind of on its side, it can really fatigue your neck if you've got too much weight on your head. So we try to go a little light if we can. But yeah, this is my caving helmet.
Yeah.
And without it, I couldn't do what I do. And especially not without the lights.
Right. I got to imagine because it's very black down there, is it? It's very dark.
Yes.
Yeah. No natural light at all.
None at all. Yeah. Yeah. If you turn off your light, you can't see anything, and you can't see your hand in front of your face, and you never will. Your eyes don't adjust to the darkness down there. There's nothing to adjust to. It's completely dark.
That's unbelievable. Yeah. And it's not only that you wear this helmet, like I, read up a little bit. You wear sort of a full kind of outfit that protects the cave from you and you from the cave. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. And it kind of depends on what type of caving you're doing and where you are. I mean, there's a lot of caves where we'll wear just tights and shorts and a short sleeve shirt. And other caves where you're wearing full coveralls that are made of like a water resistant Cordura material. So, I mean, it just really depends on where you're going. Wetsuits, are necessary in some caves.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it depends.
So describe to us a little bit, what do you do when you're caving? I've got this very pedestrian notion. So there's some underground cavity and you enter it, you abseil yourself into it, and then you just walk into it and you map it out. I mean, that's as far as I get. Describe to us what you're actually doing.
Yeah. And again, it depends on the cave that you're in. But yeah, some of them do require rappelling into them and then climbing back out up the rope using specialized equipment. Some of them are purely horizontal caves that are really complex and mazy, a lot of crawling and scrambling around. That's more my jam. I really like the big horizontal maze caves. That's what I'm really into myself. But yeah, you start at the entrance and go in, and depending on what your objective is, and for me that's usually mapping the cave and finding new parts of it. You're going to go to the end of where somebody else left off on another team and pick up where they left off and continue down the passage and take measurements as you go.
Yeah. So describe to us a favorite one, one that you like, you liked a lot. I mean, I read, an article about you where you went in New Mexico on a 13-mile expedition and spent 60 hours underground, and it was almost a Guinness World Record. Can you describe to us, for us pedestrians above ground, a specific exploration and just make us see it, make us experience it a bit?
Yeah. Yeah. And that cave in particular is one of my favorites. That one's called Fort Stanton Cave, and it is in New Mexico, and it's managed by the Bureau of Land Management. And so it's on public land. And so, yeah, we go in under a permit and map out the cave. And we're really, helping the Bureau of Land Management understand more about what they're managing and more about the cave and figuring out where it goes. And so that cave in particular is really fascinating. It has really long calcite formation in it called Snowy River. I mean, it's absurdly long. It's like a 12-mile long uh, river of calcite that has formed over. It's like a white crust. It's beautiful and white and sparkly that formed whenever the water flows through the cave, and then it recedes and dries up. Then you're left with this white crust behind, and it's just a gorgeous cave. But yeah, at the end, it's still going, and we're still finding more. But it is a world record. It's 13 miles of one-way travel from the entrance to the furthest end of the cave, and that's the furthest you can go underground anywhere in the world.
My goodness. And so it's basically 3 days underground, is that right? 60 hours?
Yeah, that particular trip,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
we spent about 3 days underground, 2 nights camping,
Yeah.
and some really, really long days, like a 16 or 17-hour day, one day away from camp, pushing the end of the cave and trying to find more cave passages and adding them to the map. So that was that was like a medium length trip, I'd say. About
Oh,
3 days.
that wasn't the longest trip.
No, I've done some camps that were about 8 days. 8 days is the longest I've spent in a cave for sure. But yeah, most of them are about 4 days.
Right.
Most of the caves that I've done are in the Black Hills, actually, where I live. I live there for a reason because of the caves, and so uh, there's some really fantastic exploration that you can do in the Black Hills, and most of the cave camps there are about 4 days.
Right. So what does that do to you? What does it do with you when you spend days on end, really closed off, not only from civilization, but also from above ground nature? Like, try to
Yeah.
describe that to us a little bit. What's that like?
Yeah, I find it to be kind of soothing in a way. To be honest, it's a place where you can kind of shut out all the noise of the outside world, and you're just down there with your team. I mean, we never cave alone, so we're not like truly alone when we're underground, but we're part of a small team, and we have no idea what's going on outside while we're in there, and nobody else outside knows what's going on with us. So we have zero communication with the outside world, and if anything, if we needed to notify anybody on the surface that something had happened, you have to send somebody out of the cave, and they have to go all the way to the entrance to make a phone call. So there's no communication at all. And yeah, for me, I think it's kind of comforting in a way. I like being cut off from a lot of the things that are in our day to day lives, and then when you reemerge, it's you have a greater appreciation almost for the world, and for the open skies and the night sky. I love coming out at night and looking up at the stars, and it just looks so vast.
Yeah, yeah, I can imagine. Well, I probably can't imagine that, but I can try to imagine it. So, you've already told us it's literally pitch black there. There's really no light, not just little light. You don't adjust to it, and you say it's very soothing. Is it also completely quiet, or are there noises?
Yeah, it is completely quiet. So when you're sleeping on one of these cave camps, I mean, it is like the darkest and quietest place you'll probably ever sleep. Yeah, I mean, sometimes your companions, if they snore or something, there's that sound. But for the most part, it's completely silent. And I'm not like a white noise sleeper. I like the quiet. So for me, it's great. I usually get really good sleep underground.
Okay, so that's a pro, right? Yeah. Uh, what happens to your sense of like space and time? Does it, and your body in this environment? Yeah, does it change somehow? Or yeah.
Yeah, I've heard of some studies where, people's circadian rhythms kind of get off a little bit if you're isolated from the outside world like that for long periods of time. But on the trips that we're on, we keep to a schedule. We look at a watch, we set an alarm. So if we don't just allow ourselves to sleep for 20 hours and then wake for 20 hours,
Mhm.
we do often spend long periods of time awake, and our schedule gets adjusted as we go. So on the fourth day of a 4-day trip, we might be going to bed at 5 or 6 a.m. and then getting up in the afternoon. So we still sleep like 8 hours, but we'll have these incredibly long work days
Mhm.
away from camp where we're surveying and mapping the cave.
Right. Yeah. And so then, as you just said, you're there with a team. You're never there, by yourself. I mean, you have to trust these people utterly, don't you? Like, do you know these? Did you know these
Yeah.
guys really well, or?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, for the most part, I don't go caving with a lot of people that I don't know. But sometimes, yeah, there's always, new people that I meet, and we'll go on a cave trip together. But for the most part, these big expeditions that I'm doing, they're they are usually people that I know well, that I've known for years, and we know each other's skills really well. And yeah, we really trust each other.
Yeah, you must. Yeah. Is there never, like, if I were in this situation, I'm a bit claustrophobic, and I just know that this would not go well. Do you ever have that there's a sense where you think, I want to get out, but then you can't? Like, does that ever happen, or to somebody who's as experienced as you not?
Yeah, thankfully it doesn't bother me really. I have had definitely some moments where, I won't say stuck, but I definitely got into a very small squeeze, a place where, I could, for a little while there, I couldn't go forward or backward. I had just kind of puzzle through it and figure out how to move my body or how to unstick my clothing or something so that I could get out of that situation. And yeah, in those moments, you're kind of like, okay, gotta take a deep breath and figure this out. Because I'm a pretty tiny person, and so I'm often one of the first people that they send into some of the smaller holes. And so that maybe that's happened to me more often than it's happened to other people. but uh, but yeah, I have gone into some really small things where I did have that moment of oh boy, I really got to work through this because my
Yeah.
friends can't fit through this hole that I just went through. I got
I
to figure this out myself.
Oh my God, I got to imagine. Yeah. Is it that you feel isolated? Like, so you are objectively, one of the most isolated ways that you can imagine a person would be. Does that affect you? Like,
Yeah, it is kind of an isolating feeling, but I wouldn't say it's in a bad way.
right?
It's something that I think we all really enjoy. We all and that's what something we all have in common is that we all really kind of like that isolation. We're drawn to that. We're drawn to going to these really remote places together and trying to figure out what's there. And it's just part of the mystery of it is just not knowing. You go through a tiny little hole or something and you don't know. Is it going to open up into a big room? Is it going to dead end in a way where I have to back all the way out and I can't turn around? Or is it going to, what's going to happen? And
Yeah. So sometimes you literally see stuff that nobody has seen before, right?
yeah, yeah, almost every trip. I mean, that's what we're there to do. Yeah, is to find things that no light has ever shown on this particular crystal or this passageway before, and nobody's ever been there.
Yeah.
And we're adding it to the map as we go. There's very few places left on the planet where you can do that.
Yeah. True exploration. And then you sometimes find things there. What might you find?
Yeah, sometimes we find really unusual formations or uh, hydrologic features. One that really stands out is a jewel cave in South Dakota. We found the water table. We found this beautiful, like Windex blue lake, full of water,
Mhm.
just a gorgeous, deep, deep blue. And that had never been found at that particular cave before. There's a lot of caves that have a lot of water in them, and then there's caves that are really known for how dry they are. And that is one of those caves that, it's really rare to even find water dripping from the ceiling, let alone a giant body of water it was probably 20 feet deep.
Yeah.
So I was on a team that found that water table where it intersects the aquifer
Mhm.
for the first time, and that was one of the most exciting discoveries for me.
Mhm. Yeah. You've also discovered ossified skeletons. I've read of an extinct. What was it? An extinct version of a llama. Is that right?
Yeah, there's some really strange paleontological things that you can find in many of these caves. Fort Stanton is one of those caves that has some really unusual ancient animals that you can find. Wind Cave in South Dakota, there was a team a few years ago that found a pine marten skeleton that was dated to be 11,000 years old. And I've since gone out past that same area on several other trips, and we keep finding skeletons out there of all these extinct creatures, and it's amazing. Yeah, the scientific potential in these caves is really unparalleled.
Yeah. And so that's one of the reasons, why you're doing it, right? You're not just doing it for kicks, but in order to put this on the scientific map. I mean, literally map it out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's something that, we find fun. However, we are contributing to science as we're doing it. We're collecting data. We're making the initial map of the cave and then making some of these initial discoveries, finding some of these things that then warrant further research. And so then scientists will often send us back in to the cave to collect a sample, to collect one of those critters or take a water sample, um,
Yeah.
something like that.
How does one discover or develop a passion for that sort of thing? Like, so it's not something that you probably, did you wake up one morning and think, I'd really like to, or like, how did this come about?
Yeah, I kind of fell into it. I think I had gone caving for the first time with the Girl Scouts when I was a kid, and I thought it was really cool, but I didn't know at the time that there were caves that nobody had found the end of yet. I mean, I had no idea that there was such potential for exploration and discovery until I was in college. And then I did an internship with the national parks, and I went to Wind Cave National Park in South Dakota and was leading cave tours there. And that's when I found out about these things. And, Wind Cave is one of those caves where nobody's found the end of it yet. It's 160 long. And when I first moved to South Dakota, the cave was, I believe, 80 miles long, something like that. So a lot has been added to the map just in the time that I've lived in South Dakota. So I found out about it through that internship, and I was hooked immediately.
Mhm. Is there sometimes also, like I read about, you found an amazing cave or part of a cave, and you said afterwards, I don't actually want to go back there, because, was it because you thought it was so amazing it should be left alone? I'm not quite sure whether I'm getting that right. But yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what cave that would have been. There, I mean, sure, there's there's definitely caves where I'm like, I'm good. That trip was, yeah. Have you heard of type 2 fun? So there's like type 2 fun where it's not that fun while you're doing it, but then you go back and look at it later
Yeah.
and you're like, that was really rewarding and cool. And then you're like, I want to do that again,
Yeah.
even though at the time you were kind of suffering. So that's how most caving is. It's like type 2 fun.
Mhm.
But then there's the type of fun where it's just not fun at all.
Mhm.
Where, you're like, you reflect on it and you're like, no, I don't know that I want to do that again. Uh, so there's definitely caves that are like that, and everybody's got their type of caving that appeals to them the most.
Mhm.
I think really wet, cold caves are not really my thing.
Mhm.
My feet get too cold,
Mhm. Mhm.
so there's certain environments that just aren't as appealing to me as others.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Huh.
that's the thing.
Uh, do you So, I mean, humanity has discovered, as you said, much of what there is to discover. That's not always been to the benefit of the things that have been discovered. We are not only explorers, we're also destroyers sometimes. Do you worry about that? So, sort of once you put these places literally on the map, that you open them up towards, kind of traffic that they may not be
Yeah.
geared towards.
Yeah, absolutely. And cave conservation is really at the forefront of our minds while we're doing it. And then we also think about the potential consequences of the activity that we're doing. As far as, like you said, really putting it on the map. Once something's been discovered, then it's out there, right? But thankfully, a lot of the work that I do is on public lands where there's controlled access to those caves. And so, you have to have a permit to go into them. I'm not concerned that somebody's going to come along and put a bunch of graffiti on the walls and do something terrible to the cave. But we need to be really, really careful as we are caving to make sure that we aren't harming the cave. Every footprint that you leave is there forever. I mean, there are restoration trips that are often done in caves where you can essentially erase footprints or erase signs that people have been there. But otherwise, it's there to stay. A lot of the caves that I work in particular, don't have natural restorative processes. There's not like a river flowing through them that's going to erase the evidence that you were there. So we have to pick our footprints very, very carefully. And if we're a team of 3 or 4 people and we're the only people that are ever going to be down this passage, then we map it and we come back and we go somewhere else. I mean, chances are no one is ever even going to go into that passage that we just mapped ever again. And so, the impact is a real thing. It is something that's more cumulative, though. So as more and more and more people go, you'll begin to notice those footprints or see the evidence that people were there. So we're just really judicious about how we travel and try to be as careful as we possibly can be.
Yeah, because one's got to imagine that these ecosystems down there are incredibly fragile. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And you have to travel slowly and carefully so that you don't break anything. I mean, there's delicate formations kind of all around you, and you just got to be really careful not to bump your head on the ceiling, or you certainly wouldn't want to break off something like a stalactite that took hundreds or maybe thousands of years to form.
Yeah. One also imagines, question for you, that as our planet is more and more under threat, these systems are under threat more also, or is that a misperception? I mean, presumably they're not just shut off from everything else that happens on the planet ecologically.
Yeah, I'd say that is the case, depending on the cave again and where you are. But as the climate changes, you're going to have some places that are going to be a little drier than they used to be, places that might be wetter than they used to be, and you'll see those effects underground eventually. Sometimes it might take more time before it's noticeable, but there's definitely places where there might be part of a cave that used to drip, used to be wet, used to have formations actively growing, and then it dries up and nothing's forming there anymore. And then, just like elsewhere on the planet, the ranges of different species of animals that depend on caves is shifting. So, you might start to see some species of bats that used to inhabit a particular cave that no longer do, because the climate has changed in a way that they no longer find favorable conditions for them in that particular cave.
Yeah. What animals are there? So the only one literally I could come up with is, well, I suppose there's some sort of bats there.
Yeah.
Is that what there is? Or, presumably, are there insects? Are there fish in the water?
Yeah. Yeah, it depends on the cave that you're in.
Yeah.
Some caves are really known for their life, for really unusual species of insects or cave fish that are blind. There's other caves where there's still a really great diversity of life, but it's more at the microscopic level. And so they're scientists that have had us take samples for them, and they're finding these really unusual microbes that live underground, but they're imperceptible, of course, to us. So there's a wide variety of life that depends on caves. And and you mentioned bats. Of course, bats are a critical part of the ecosystem, and they depend heavily on caves. And so, and I love bats. I think they're amazing creatures. They're so fascinating. I have my rabies vaccine, and so I can handle them. I've been part of some studies where you can capture bats and take measurements and swab them to see if they have the fungus that causes white nose syndrome. Have you heard about white nose before?
No, I'm afraid I haven't. No, tell us. No.
Yeah, so white nose syndrome is unfortunately a disease that began to affect bats in the United States in 2006. Back in New York, actually, is where it started in this country. And yeah, since then, it's been spreading steadily westward, and it killed millions of bats. It's a horrible disease. It completely decimated many populations of bats. There were some places where over 90% of the bats in a particular site just died. So horrible disease. And so the causative fungus, the fungus that causes this disease, is called um, Pseudomyces destructans. And so we can swab the bats and test for that fungus to see if it's present on the bats. So we're working to track that fungus as it spreads across the country and trying to look at ways to limit the exposure of the bats to the disease.
Yeah, right. Bats are fascinating. I agree. There's a very famous philosophy paper that's called "What's It Like to Be a Bat?" And it's sort of a reflection on, the nature of experience, really, and, whether we can tell anything about what it's like to be a bat, because, their experience must be so different, like the echolocation, how they navigate the environment. Can we,
Oh, yeah.
do you think you know anything about what it's like to be a bat?
I was just thinking to myself, wow, I got to read that paper. That sounds fascinating. I don't know what it's like to be a bat at all. I'm sure it's very different from the human experience. And that's something that I love to reflect on, is how other animals experience the world. Because I mean, we don't echolocate. What must that be like, right? To be able to bounce sounds back and, get a 3D picture of your environment. I mean, how amazing is that?
That's
Right?
right. What a skill to have, right?
Yeah. There actually are humans that can do it. I don't know if you've heard about that before, but yeah, there's
Yeah,
people who were born with no sight who have learned to echolocate.
that's right.
It's amazing. So people can do it.
That's right. Yeah, so there's hope. Yeah.
I've been thinking about learning another language, so maybe I should just pick up echolocation as my second language.
That'd be wonderful. Yeah. Very useful on your explorations, right? When you can.
Yeah.
Is there a cave that you haven't visited where you'd really like burning to go?
That's a good question. Where do I want to go that I haven't gone? I have not spent much time at Mammoth Cave in Kentucky. It is the longest cave in the entire world. And I went there once, but I have not really caved there. I was there for a geology class that I took, and I have not done any exploration really in the Mammoth Cave area. So that's a place that I would really like to go.
I think that's perhaps a suitable way to end, with an outlook of where you would like to go next. It was wonderful to talk to you. I can't say that, I'm now going to go immediately and join a cave expedition myself. But it's so fascinating.
Well,
to
if
hear
you change your mind, let me know. And I'd love to take you caving sometime. And for anybody in the US anyway that's listening, it's if you join the National Speleological Society or go to their website, caves.org, you can look up a caving club near you, and that's how you the best way to get started with caving.
Excellent. Wonderful, Rene. Thank you so much for your time. It was wonderful to have you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Take care.
Thank you for listening to Loneliness and You, a podcast on the research and experience of loneliness. My guest today was Rene Ohms. You can reach us by emailing lonelinesspod@gmail.com or following us on Instagram and TikTok at loneliness.pod. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate, review, and subscribe to Loneliness and You wherever you get your podcasts. Loneliness and You is produced by Stacey Goldman and myself, Axel Seaman. This episode was engineered and edited by Steve Salina. Our introductory sound was designed by Dave Meckin, and our logo art is by Paul Fisher-Davies. The podcast is financially supported by Bentley University. Thanks for listening. Talk soon.